our final talk, next slide please, is the old blogger, Alice! A little bit of background about Alice. So I met Alice 8 years ago, and we connected on Twitter, as you did back then, and she came to see me talk at Brighton SEO. And apparently I was the only talk that she thought made any common sense whatsoever. It's obviously really stuck with her. And we went out and we drank 2 bottles of wine, and by the end of the night we decided, having met each other just that first time, to start a business together. And then what was a whirlwind 5 years where we did just that. So, can you please put your hands together for one of my favourite humans in the entire world, Alice Reeves. Thank you.
So I used to be so frickin' joyful. Or, to be more honest, my emotions would kind of swing like a pendulum between absolute elation and complete despair. I was a person who felt every emotion viscerally, and I was not afraid to express them. Through my childhood, my teens, even well into my 20s, I would squeal with delight and I would sob with despair at the TV shows that I loved, because I was so involved in all of the characters' stories. I would throw my head back, I would roar with laughter, and I would sob with my whole body. I would physically, literally jump for joy, and I would scream with rage. And then, somewhere along the line, I became what is known as professional. I know, right? So in my mid-20s, I started working for a marketing agency. And in that job, I used to do a lot of blogger outreach, which for any youngins in the room is influencer marketing before social media was invented. And I bloody loved it. I was so good at it. Right from the start, I built fantastic relationships with bloggers, some of whom are still my friends today. And every time I got a link, every time a blogger said yes to me, I would shout, yes! And I punched the air, and I did a happy dance at my desk, because I fucking loved my job. And then one day, a manager pulled me aside and told me that I was being too vocal about my achievements, that it made other people in the office feel bad, and that I should tone it down. One of those direct quotes. And I was absolutely devastated. I went home and I burst into tears, because I absolutely loved that job. I loved the team, and I really thought that they loved me too. But I never ever felt the same about that job after this exchange. And from that moment on, I was so self-conscious about how I came across every minute that I was in the office. I thought that I had been spreading positivity, having fun, encouraging other people to find the joy in their work. But apparently, I was having the complete opposite effect. So I stopped trying to bring the joy for fear of upsetting or annoying anyone. And so I put this lid on my joy, and I moved into my next role at a bigger agency. And the work here was a lot bigger. It was bigger budgets, it was more challenging, it was more pressurised, and I cared so deeply about doing a good job for my clients and for my team, and I would get very frustrated when things didn't work out. And over again, my passion was labelled as aggression. Now, in this job, I was told multiple times that I was disrespectful, that I was rude, that I was insubordinate, that's my favourite, whenever I was fighting my corner for something that I actually believed in. And in those situations, it became really hard not to get angry. And then, when it came to talk promotion, I was told that despite being one of the company's best performers, I could not be promoted because I was too visibly emotional in the office. I know, right? So I worked really hard to put another lid on my frustration and on my aggressive passion. And eventually, I didn't feel it anymore. And I didn't feel any joy either. But hey, I got the promotion. I said I was going to be an agency director before I was 30, and I was. This was absolutely everything I wanted. I just never thought that I was going to have to get rid of so much of who I was to be able to get there. And so, dear listeners, I ended up quitting that job on my 30th birthday because it was like a switch flipped. There was this guy who'd been repeatedly undermining me for months, and I'd been biting my tongue and I'd been trying not to get emotional about it. And then he made one snide comment too many. And I call that my buckaroo moment. Because it was like when you put that tiny little object on the buckaroo donkey and it just flips the fuck out and chucks everything everywhere. And I handed him my notice there and then. And when my boss asked me why I was leaving, I told him it was because there was absolutely no joy in anything that I was doing. And then Sophie and I met. And we started working together a few months after that. We founded our agency and it was called The Joyful Web. And then later on it became simply The Joyful. And this felt so symbolic. I loved the name. It felt like sticking two fingers up to everyone who'd ever told me that I was too much. Because now I was working for myself. And I was free. And I was free to be me. And I was free to be as joyful and emotional as I wanted. Right? Well, not quite. Because when I wanted to be my joyful, passionate, fierce, emotional self again, I could not find her. And whenever there was a glimpse of her, I started to experience this phenomenon that Brené Brown calls foreboding joy. And that is when any feeling of joy is immediately followed by an intense worry that something is about to go very wrong. Because technically, I was free to be me. But what if being me was not actually okay? What if everyone around me had been right? Would people trust me enough to give me their money and want to work with me if I was too excitable and passionate? Would they see me as naive? Would I be labelled as angry or aggressive if I stood up for myself when someone treated me badly? Would clients worry about my ability to do my job if they saw me get emotional or upset? What if I went all in on finding my joy and being fully expressed in who I was, only to be rejected again? No, I couldn't risk that. It was much better to be the person that I thought everyone wanted me to be. Because that's how I was going to prove that I had what it takes in business. But what did that really give me? Well, I carried on suppressing who I was. I kept that lid firmly on my joy. I played devil's advocate with my own opinions. I showed up as the professional everyone told me that I should be. And I was terrified of letting a real me slip through and be rejected. And I wondered why I was so sad and stressed all the time. Our business was The Joyful, for fuck's sake. And I could not find it. Because despite having the freedom to be who I wanted to be in life and in business, I was scared. And I let that fear win over and over again. I was so used to twisting myself up in knots, trying to be the person that other people had told me that I should be. And in trying to prove to be a proper business owner, whatever that was, that I completely lost sight of who I was, who I wanted to be, and everything that actually gave me joy. And spoiler alert, because I was continuing to be someone that I wasn't, it was making me anxious and miserable. So in all my attempts to people please, I was not in fact pleasing anyone. And I didn't want to admit that, because it meant admitting that I really didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't know how to find my way back to myself. Then, on top of all of this existential crisis, a global pandemic hit, I had a complete mental breakdown, and I got diagnosed with ADHD. Then, I left the business that Sophie and I had built together. And I knew that it was time to figure out who the hell I was. I needed to find what made me joyful, what made me angry, what my actual opinions were when I wasn't saying what I thought other people wanted to hear. It's not been easy, and I still haven't figured it out yet. There's this bit in the film Runaway Bride where Richard Gere discovers that Julia Roberts has pretended that she likes her eggs in the same way as all her fiancés like them. And then ultimately he turns to her and he says, "You're so lost, you don't even know how you ago, I had no idea how I liked my eggs. And so, after a lot of wrong turns and backtracks and trying things that really didn't work, I'm going to leave you with the things that I am still learning on my personal road to joy and self-discovery. Number 1, joy is a conscious, continuous effort. It's not a destination. You are not going to just wake up joyful one day. You have to find what gives you those glimmers of it on a daily basis, no matter how weird or random they are. And for me, my joy is not getting up at 5 a.m, hitting the gym and having a green smoothie.
Fuck yeah!
It's not journaling either. My joy is taking time for random creativity, playing with clay, doing hot yoga, having a lazy Sunday, singing songs from musicals really loudly and really badly in my kitchen, learning random new skills I'm never going to use again, and making weird niche jokes and laughing to myself when nobody else gets them. Number 2, my brain and my body are not separate entities. Talk therapy is great when you are feeling lost, but if you've reached the level of disconnection with yourself that I had, somatic work is the one. It takes time, it takes practice, just fucking weird sometimes, but coming home to my body has been coming home to myself. And because I'm so connected with it, I'm not starving it or punishing it with exercise that doesn't feel good anymore, and I've never felt more connected with what feels good and what doesn't. 3, I cannot fully feel into my joy if I push my anger away. Because when I numb one feeling, I numb its opposite. And I end up stuck in depression and anxiety where I don't really feel anything. I'm not a person who can pick and choose which emotions I feel. I am an all or nothing person. And so if I want the highs, I have to allow the lows. 4, if I want to attract people who love me for who I am, then I have to be who I am. Because if you are always wearing camouflage, and if you are always dimming your light, then the people who are looking for someone just like you are never, ever going to find you. 5, when you're so used to doing what other people tell you to do, and being who you think other people want you to be, being who you are feels really, really scary. Do not let the fear trick you into believing that what you want isn't right for you. 6, there will always be people who think that I am too much, and they are so welcome to go and find less. Because I will not make myself less in any way, because that is the road to joylessness.
Fuck yeah!
And finally, I like my eggs poached.